Yeah, there's a lot of great things that have already been shared too, and the one thing I just wanted to reiterate too is like you don't have to be an expert or like a mental health professional to have these conversations with young people too, and bringing other people into the conversations, but also just young people themselves. I've run mental health groups with young people, and like when we look at their feedback and hear about what they thought about that programming, a lot of the times like the number one comment that we hear is, I loved hearing from other young people around me about their stories, and that I'm not the only one that's struggling, and that other people may not talk about these things openly, but I thought I was the only one who was going through these things, or I never had a space where someone actually asked me these questions and cared to listen about those specific things that I may be going through. And so I think just creating that space and giving young people the opportunity to show that you're there to listen, they're not the only ones who are going through these things, can be really helpful too. The other thing that I found that's really helpful, and this is just really kind of basic and simple, what I try and do in lots of groups, is like you can do a sharing circle, and some young people may be comfortable in speaking up and sharing what they may be struggling with, or their experiences with mental health, or things that they're doing to take care of themselves, but it can also be really intimidating and uncomfortable for some young people, and some young people may need time to kind of process things a little bit more, or just like space where they don't feel comfortable sharing out loud, just to kind of write down their thoughts, and you're able to get a lot more from young people who may not feel comfortable sharing out loud when you give them different opportunities to participate. And sometimes that's writing, or sometimes that's giving them more time to kind of process and take things home with them, and then to come back. Because if you, it's like a young person may look like they're disengaged and just really aren't participating, but they have a lot that they can share, and that you just need to ask them how they want to participate too.
Some really great answers. Thanks for doing this work, you know, like a lot of what you're saying really hits home, you know, and I think young people, they need consistency too. You know, I think like if, you know, being present, being visible, just like as you are mentioning, is super important. And, you know, people in your community who, you know, you see and, you know, wow, I didn't know that they also struggled, you know. I'm struggling too, and, you know, you can relate to whether it's your peers, you know, other community people, they're like, oh, they're doing so good, you know. I didn't know that they were struggling, and normalizing that conversation is super important. And building young people's wellness bundles, love it, love it. Love to learn more about that too. So yes, so we're gonna move on to question number 3, and again, these questions are kind of rolling into one another, but they're also building on top of each other as well. So it's going to help us to understand, you know, the picture a little bit more. So now, when we're talking about the prevention piece, what can schools do to create programs or spaces that promote mental health for their students? So I know it was mentioned earlier about some of the initiatives, some of the ideas and things that, you know, are currently taking place, but, you know, if there's something that you can mention to all of our participants in our audience here, what are ways that maybe they can bring back home and implement that into the work, and how they engage and build those relationships with young people. So prevention piece, anybody want to take a first go at it?
Sure, I can start. So similar, yeah, to what I said before about, you know, anywhere we can look to infuse mental health education and wellness information for our students, whether that's in, you know, group educational formats, whether that's from a teacher or a guest speaker, is just a really great way to have for prevention as well. Information is prevention, right, for our students, so being able to offer them as much as we can. When we think about programming, the thing that came to mind for me is really taking that strength-based approach with our students, so really focusing on what their strengths and their interests and their capabilities are, and how can we develop programming around that. So it might not look like it's, quote, mental health programming or intervention. Prevention is building up all of the things that those students or individuals already do well, because the more we're focusing on our strengths and the things that we're interested in and the things that we're good at, the better we're going to feel. And so if we can really look towards, developing programming in those areas, you know, as an example, at our school, we offer daily recreation programming. So the students come to the school at their lunchtime, they give up some of that free time they have at lunch to come and play volleyball or play basketball or anything that they're interested in. And we've noticed that that helps with not only their mood and their ability to kind of regulate during the day, but it also helps build engagement at the school and increases attendance. And it's just it seems like a very simple activity like playing volleyball or anything in the gym, but it really is addressing that prevention piece and helping to build wellness in different areas in the day.
Just to add a little, just that mental health education piece. So whether that's through mindfulness and relaxation programs being offered, maybe workshops and seminars on stress management, resilience, and emotional intelligence for both students and staff, open communication, family engagement, regular check-ins with our young ones, whether that be in a group or one-on-one, whatever works for them. And definitely having that safe space and access to counseling services within the school is helpful as well.
A bit loud there. So myself, I'll speak from a little bit of the work I'm currently doing in student success within the Manitoba Mods 1 program. So there's a big focus on programming that is, like someone had shared, strength-based for our youth, trying to build up their own confidence levels and their resiliency. So focusing on their strengths and going to them, asking them what they need, really helps guide that programming. So opening up and creating safe spaces within the schools is paramount. Sometimes we have to advocate for that, and it's our job to do so. It's so important to have those spaces within our schools, within our buildings, to have these discussions, to have these talks, to work on these skills. One of the things that we like to do too for our student engagement is work on their physical health as well, especially with our young guys. They really advocated for themselves, and we poured a lot of money, and the school did as well. They met us halfway, and we built up like one of the best gyms we have on the island there for them. And they fully utilize that. And we've created a passport system for that they can kind of work towards being in there. And they sign contracts and they're there. But in there, we invite community members. Sometimes it's police officers, sometimes it's EMS. But we invite people in to come in and come work out with them, come mentor them, just come be people with them, community members. But while we're in there, there's talks about wellness and what we're doing for our self-care, nutrition, and what we're doing for ourselves. Another focus that we do is lunch and learns. We make sure that we're hosting workshops, lunch and learns. And yes, there's always food there because it brings in the numbers. But yeah, doing those lunch and learns is really important because we could offer so much information, and it could be varied. And if students circle back and they show interest, that discussion can happen in a further way, or we could offer in-class workshops and seminars. Cooking's always a good one, right? Food. So we have a cooking and baking program at 2 of our schools down there, and our staff are in there facilitating that. But they also bring in community members to come in and help facilitate that. While they're in there, they're able just to have those discussions and just such a different level. You're just in a different atmosphere. It feels like a different environment, even if you're in the same building. And it just sets the tone sometimes to have those one-on-one real talks, real discussions. People are a little bit more open to share. Their guard is down. So having fun, engaging programming is just, it's the way to kind of start that conversation, start it off. And yeah, miigwech.
So we've already kind of mentioned this too, but I think prevention, it's really an all-of-community approach and starts right from when someone is born, and really making sure that everyone in our communities has a strong sense of belonging, that they know where they're from, their sense of identity, knowing their language, like that's all prevention too. And I think it also continues into when someone may be struggling with their mental health. Like, we know a lot of young people, the majority of people will first start experiencing challenges with their mental health if they're going to start experiencing challenges with their mental health before they're 25. And so as much resources as we can be putting into supporting mental health of young people before the age of 25, to make sure that once someone has let us know that they're struggling with their mental health and that they need more support, they get that support as quickly as possible. Because the sooner that we can support them, the better those outcomes are going to be for that young person. And I think we see a lot of young people reaching out for support, or even before they reach out for support, there's just so much uncertainty. They're scared to reach out, so they kind of sit with it themselves. They may reach out and then not get connected to the right service, or there's long wait times for services. There's not the right services in their community too. And I know it's like a resourcing challenge, and support that's available in communities are really different. But if we could be that advocate for young people when they do reach out to us, to try and connect them to that support as soon as possible. When I think about prevention, it's also preventing further challenges. So once a young person has let us know that they're struggling, we want to get them that support as soon as possible. One particular program that I'll speak to too, that our team at Youth Wellness Hubs Ontario has been supporting across the province, is called Preventure. And it's a specific program that we provide funding for in schools and communities for young people. They participate in 2 sessions of the program, and it supports mental health promotion and substance use prevention. And right now we're working with Lakehead and Delico here in Thunder Bay to do an adaptation of that program for First Nations young people and communities. And we're currently piloting that program in a few school boards across the province. And so having specific programs that you can do, I think like all of these examples that people have been giving are really amazing, but as much support that we can be providing, mental health programming that young people have said has been working for them and that research has shown that is improving their outcomes, it's important, and it really takes a whole community approach too.
Again, great job, great work. So just to recap, because there's some really important things that was mentioned in there, and I just wanted to just recap some of those, and I guess it'll also lead into our final question. But creating safe spaces for students to build healthy relationships amongst each other, to have peer supports. Like, I think that's something really important as well. Like, I think having, knowing that your peers, you have the support of your peers as well, and that talks about like, addressing the stigmatism about it as well. If people are having conversations about mental health, then they can know how to support their peers through it. One great example is Safe Talk, I believe. Safe Talk is a really great, program, something that, young people can participate in, not just young people, but educators, administrators as well. And, how can you support young people, peers, someone who is going through mental health crises? So I think that's really important. Accessing the counseling services. We're here. Supporting holistic health as well. Like, mental health is just one part of our overall holistic health. So, and it was mentioned about, healthy food, having food. Like, having food, they will come, but like having access to healthy food and supporting someone's physical wellness as well is all a part of supporting one's mental health. So I really liked that was mentioned. And mentorship opportunities, whether it's bringing in some of those community leaders again to share, is super important. And having a community approach to prevention, I think that's really important. Knowing that your community has your back and that you're supported by your community, and seeing it everywhere throughout your community, so that it's this conversation is normalized. So, and last is having a strong identity is prevention as well. So I think that's, I know as a young man myself, I went through a lot struggles with drugs and alcohol, and I didn't know I was just some real angry young Native kid who wasn't proud of who he was. I was real ashamed, and I didn't have no sense of identity. And where did I turn? I turned to drugs and alcohol to find some type of, support, or, seeing, like I had friends there when I was using. And so, and it wasn't until I went to a treatment center that was culturally based, culturally grounded, it was a 4-month program. And, that's where I got my Anishinaabe name. That's where I went on my first fast. That's where I learned about my roles, I had rites of passages. I had roles and responsibilities. Like, I had a role in my community. I didn't actually know that at first. It was like, like, hey, we need firekeepers in our community. Then I became a firekeeper, right? And so providing opportunities for young people to learn, to engage with those community leaders and to participate is super important. So, great stuff. Last question that we have here, trauma-informed teaching starts with understanding of how trauma can impact learning and behavior. How do schools and our teachers learn more about trauma-informed practices? So with some of their work with the organizations that you are with, how do you see trauma-informed practices at play? Do you see shortfalls? Do you have any really cool ideas that you're working to implement within your organizations? And also for the crowd as well, all the audience, if there's something that is working, best practices within your community, your organization, like we want to hear from it as well. So keep that towards the end, and we'd like to hear